folks. It's Charlotte Loppie back again for another talk with some amazing researchers from the Faculty of Human and Social Development in what we're calling our research circle. And so today we're going to be talking to Dr. Tamara Krawchenko and Dr. Katya Rhodes. Both are assistant professors in the School of Public Administration. They're both fairly new faculty members in the first couple of years of their appointments. And they share many things in common in terms of their research, where they're from. And so we're really happy to have both of you here today to talk to us a little bit about what you do. So
great, thanks, Charlotte.
And so maybe we'll go by alphabetical order. I'm just going to say by first name, just because that's the first one. So we'll start with you, Katya. And the first question is, how would you describe your research to a neighbor, someone you live close to?
Sure. Yeah, that's a tough question. I'll try to come up with a good answer. So I do have a neighbor who is really concerned with everything that's going on recently in terms of extreme weather events. We've seen floods, wildfires, heat domes, and not too many people connect that to climate change, but I try to explain to people what's going on in the world most recently and why that's happening. So I would say at the University of Victoria, what I do is I try to reduce dramatic impacts of climate change on people and the environment where we live. And for that, I study climate policy that governments can implement to ensure that we reduce climate change in an effective and acceptable manner. And in terms of specific research projects, I study people's behavior, I study consumer motivations to adopt low carbon or zero emission technology. I try to understand what makes policy politically acceptable and also effective at reducing emissions. And I assess what policy options exist to reduce emissions at the lowest cost to the economy.
Wow, that's great. And thank you so much. That sounds fascinating and so relevant to what we're going through right now globally. And so Tamara, same question. How would you describe your research to someone?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And I think in a total nutshell, I would say, so we're in public administration and public policy, and that's about what we as a society can achieve. So I would say fundamentally, the tagline of an organization I used to work for, the OECD, a global policy organization, is better policies for better lives. And that's what I do. I try and deliver better policies for better lives. And the ultimate goal of that is to deliver well-being and quality of life and well-being across all of its dimensions. And my work is often comparative, and why I compare and look at different places is to show the possibilities of what we can achieve collectively when we put our minds to it. And my work tackles major problems facing society. Everything from the fact that we have growing territorial inequality, discontent, we have major economic transitions. We need to manage a just transition when we decarbonize our economies. How do we manage major structural changes like population aging, climate change, and so on? And how do we govern across scale? So what's the most, how do we deliver collective action, but then how do we govern that? What's the most appropriate scale to deliver on some of these important things? So that's the big picture view of my work, and I work on lots of different topics, including some that cross over with Katya on sustainability and climate change.
Wow, your neighbors must be fascinated with both of you. That's pretty impressive neighbor to have, yeah. And so back to you, Katya. The next question we'd like to ask you is who or what inspires you to be a researcher, and in what ways? Yeah,
so I think it's a longer answer, but I'll try to make it short. I grew up in the south of Russia. It was a very nice and beautiful place. However, it was very corrupt. So at the age of 15, I skipped grades in high school and I left my own hometown to go north and study in a more legitimate, uncorrupt university. And then for the same reason, I had to move places and move countries. So I came here to Canada to find that better future where I can be actually appreciated for my skills. And my mom, her name was Galina Petropavlova. She was my role model. She was a very strong, amazing woman, single mother of 2 kids, also professor in economics. She survived a lot of historical events in Russia, the collapse of Soviet Union with 2 young kids in her hands, and while working as a prof full-time and also professionally playing piano. So I have my strength and determination from my mom. But in terms of the research-specific, career-specific role models, I always give credit to my former PhD supervisor at Simon Fraser University, Dr. Mark Jacquard, who continues to be my mentor, friend, and a colleague. He always impressed me with his realism towards climate policy making, and he's not a typical academic. He makes sure that all the research is timely and policy relevant, because we don't have time to produce more publications just for the sake of academic CVs. We need to act on climate change. So my research is mostly influenced by that kind of creative thinking about climate policy making. And yeah, I think those would be the 2 key role models that I have in my life.
Wow, that's lovely. That's lovely to hear about your mom. Thanks for sharing that story. Yeah. Tamara, who or what inspires you and to be a researcher? What ways?
To some extent, some of the same things as Katya. So I grew up in Canada, and when the Soviet Union collapsed, my father moved to Ukraine, and I also spent my time back and forth there. And what that impressed upon me at an early age is the importance of governance, how good governance is the difference between the kind of corruption that, Katya has experienced, poor quality of life, and societies, that instead can flourish because they're governed well. And I do research and have worked closely with governments in different countries, including in places like Kyrgyzstan. I still have connections with people in Afghanistan, and of course in Ukraine. And I just see the importance of that, and that motivates me. It motivates me to work to improve governance in all societies, and to care about the communities and how people experience governance where they live on the ground, not in some abstract way. And my father really inspires me because he's dedicated his life to this, and he's in Kabul today, actually, which is a really hard to imagine. And he's telling me about how hard it is there. And it just reinforces, how we have to deliver, because good governance is everything, right? And I've also had fantastic mentors like my PhD supervisor, Chris Stoney, and others. So those are who motivates me. And what really motivates me is my discipline, and it's an action-oriented discipline that, meaningfully impacts lives. So that's my motivation. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. That's just so wonderful to hear you both, talk about your families and just the challenges that they've been through and are continuing to go through, and how you've drawn strength from that. Like, that's really lovely. Thank you for that. So back to Katya. The last question is, the second last question, because we have 3 serious questions and 1 fun question. What is one piece of advice that you would give to motivate a graduate student?
I actually have this piece of advice in every single course that I teach, or I have guest speakers come in and talk about this. When I worked in government, I used to have this quote on the wall of my cubicle by Mark Twain. It basically said, all you need in life is ignorance and confidence, and then success is sure. And that's something that can be very true when you work in political decision-making, where you don't have to have applied, university level, graduate level type of knowledge to make decisions. However, in my field of climate change mitigation, we now know for 3 decades that It's a bad combination to have, ignorance and confidence. So I teach my students confidence and intelligence. I think once you have both, you can and must challenge decision makers, and you can build trust. You can actually enjoy your knowledge and use it to inform public policy decisions. So in my teaching and my supervisions, I try to help students gain confidence in intelligence. I use a lot of teamwork. I use a lot of real life policy questions to encourage students think about those questions and apply their knowledge to real life policy making. And I think that's the key advice that I give to my students. I try to influence their critical thinking skills so that they come up with creative policy decisions. And for that, they need to have some basic knowledge in disciplines like economics, leadership, ethics, and so on in our field of public policy making. But at the same time, students also teach me constantly and give me advice on how to improve myself as a teacher and also as an advisor to policymakers. So I think it's a win-win situation, and it's wonderful and I'm very privileged to be in the position of being a teacher where I can share my knowledge, but also learn from students, because they are the ones who see the new realities of societal change, how issues on the ground change and what's happening. So yeah, I think that's my piece of advice to students: confidence and intelligence.
That's great advice, and I know that the students probably very much appreciate your humility as well in terms of your role as a learner as well as a teacher. Thanks. And Tamara, what piece of advice would you give to motivate a grad student?
Yeah, I think the grad students I work with, I all get them this book by Bent Frujberg called Making Social Science Matter. And I think that is my advice, is to make social science matter, especially for our field, and that we are engaging with the big issues of the day. It needs to be impactful, relevant, drawing on expertise, and to constantly stay curious about our field. And like Katya, I just have to echo, we have incredible students, many of whom are practitioners and decision makers and leaders in government, or will be future leaders. And I think that's a big thing to impart on them as well. And I always come back, and I keep coming back, especially in the last couple of years, to Jack Layton's last words to us Canadians, telling us to be loving, hopeful, and optimistic. And that too, I think that we need to maintain that if we're going to be change makers. Yeah.
Love the idea of the gifting of a book as part of your passing along those teachings that probably were very helpful to you as well.
Yeah.
And then that issue of humanity as a way to be just a good person, but also to motivate us as researchers. Thank you both for those. Now I've got a couple of fun questions for you, and I'm not going to ask you the same question because I want to catch you off guard. So Katya, if you could be any type of plant or animal, what would it be?
I would be a penguin.
A penguin. And why would
you have hard lives, Katya? Are you sure?
I don't know. I like how stoic and confident they are, how they protect their family, how they live in the community, close to each other, like win to win, hand to hand. I think we need to do more of that, especially in Westernized communities. Coming from, in Eastern European culture, I see a lot of disconnect in this society from the perspective of people not being able to communicate clearly or work with each other, work towards one collective public good. Very many people are very individualistic. We've seen that through the pandemic and through the recent events with flooding and shortage of gas and groceries in grocery stores. I'd really like our society to be more like penguins, and I'm happy to be one of them.
That's a great answer. That's a great answer. Thank you. So Tamara, if you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be and why?
think I very consciously chose to live here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is a wonderful place to live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what is it about Victoria that you love?
The connection to nature, the strength of Indigenous culture here, the fact that for me, it's a 15-minute city that I can live car-free in Canada. So I did want to move back to Canada. I was living in Paris before this.
Oh.
And it was a bit hard for quality of life and hard to raise kids in such a big city, and there's lots of pollution. And moving back to Canada, we were really had a, I've never lived in this part of Canada before. We really thought about it. And I'm very happy. It's wonderful here. So yeah, I think this is a lovely place to be. And I love you, Vic. I think we have a great university and a great school.
I agree. I agree. Listen, it's been so lovely visiting with you, getting to know you a little bit better. Really appreciate both of you. And I know that people are going to really enjoy hearing some of the things that you've shared with us today. So thank you so much for that. Hi, folks. We are back with Ryleigh Lightbourne, who is a master's student in the School of Public Administration, doing their thesis under the supervision of Dr. Tamara Krawchenko, who we've just talked to. Yeah, so welcome, Ryleigh. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really, really great. Thank you for agreeing to come and talk with us today. And so, yeah, I've got a few questions for you. And I'll begin with maybe just asking you if you can just tell us a little bit about what you're working on under Tamara's supervision.
Sure. Yeah, so my work under Tamara is very related to the work I'm doing as a co-op student as well. So right now I'm a co-op student and soon to be full-time employee, excitingly, for the Indigenous Guardians pilot in Environment and Climate Change Canada. And for those listening who may not have heard of the Indigenous Guardians pilot before, it's a really, really neat federal funding program that provides resources to Indigenous peoples and communities to honor and exercise their cultural responsibility and rights to care for the lands, waters, air, and ice of their traditional territories. And guardians can often be defined as sort of the eyes and ears on the ground, and their activities, responsibilities, and roles in their communities vary a lot depending on sort of the unique experiences and priorities and goals of each community. And these programs, they weren't a federal idea. They were an idea coming from Indigenous peoples. Guardians have existed long before this federal program ever did, and it sort of started from a request from the Indigenous Leadership Initiative. And so working on this pilot, and as a co-op student, I have been privileged to listen to and learn from amazing First Nations, Inuit, and Métis leaders. And I've been really inspired by the work that's going on in so many communities from coast to coast to coast. And I've also been surprised by some of the obstacles that exist around funding, even within a program that is so entirely co-developed and co-delivered. And that uses a distinctions-based approach, distinctions-based meaning essentially that there's separate leadership, there are separate committees for First Nations, Métis, and Inuit within the program to make decisions regarding funding and program structure rather than lumping them all into one umbrella. And so seeing those obstacles guided me to sort of define my topic for my master's thesis, which is what I'm working with Tamara on. My master's thesis is looking at contribution agreements, which are essentially the contracts that are used to get funding into communities. And I'm currently working to organize interviews with both federal employees and Indigenous program administrators and community members who have experience working with contribution agreements, specifically contribution agreements used for Indigenous-led stewardship initiatives like Guardians. And the goal of this research is to better understand whether contribution agreements that we're currently using are effectively, efficiently, and meaningfully meeting the needs of Indigenous partners as well as the federal government. And if not, to look at what the main challenges or barriers are that we need to change in order to work towards more reciprocal nation-to-nation relationships. So that's kind of the background as well as the topic of the thesis that I'm working on right now.
That's incredible. That sounds like such an amazing learning experience for you, and a piece of research and work that is really so, it's making a real contribution to communities, to Indigenous communities. So that's wonderful. That's great to know. So what part of that work do you find most interesting or invigorating?
It's a hard question because it's all really, really interesting for me. But one thing that I've been really appreciating with my work on the Guardians pilot has been part of what we do is to help organize different gatherings and workshops with our First Nations, Métis, and Inuit partners. And I get to attend those workshops and gatherings. And during these events, I get to listen to different communities, talk about their success stories, their challenges, their lessons learned from initiatives on the ground. And I get to see just how much it means to different communities to get out there on the land and to connect with different traditional practices. And it's just all really, really inspiring. And they it's so great to see how these initiatives and the people leading them, they're really the leaders of our time. And I feel like I get to learn so much from them every day. So that really makes the work I'm doing feel really worth it.
Yeah, what a wonderful thing. I mean, to have happen, right? It's not always guaranteed when we're doing any kind of research that we have such amazing. Yeah, that's really lovely. What about challenges? What part of the work do you think would be most challenging for you?
Yeah, the part of the work that's probably the most challenging for me, but in a good way, like I'm interpreting challenge here as an opportunity for growth, is self-reflection. Because as a non-Indigenous researcher who's researching essentially Indigenous Crown fiscal relationships, I feel that I really need to be aware of who I am in this, and also of how who I am is going to evolve as I do this research throughout the research. Because like, as we know, settlers have a really lengthy portfolio of harmful research on topics related to Indigenous peoples. All too often, research is conducted on Indigenous peoples as a subject without a voice. And this has caused and continues to cause a lot of hurt and misinformation and myths around Indigenous peoples in society. And then also as a public servant working, in the federal government, I need to be aware of the harmful colonial policies and practices that government has historically used and continues to use today, as well as sort of the intentions and the histories and the causes and the impacts of those policies, actions, and also inactions. And so being aware of sort of my role in this and my relationship to all of it, I think is really important. And it's only through really understanding, my own culture, both the good and the bad, and who I am within it, that I can honestly come to the table with this research to facilitate a meaningful and collaborative conversation that, it's not on Indigenous peoples, but that I'm looking to them as leaders and partners and rights holders in this conversation. And I was reading a book called What is Indigenous Research Methodology? And the author Wilson said, as a researcher, you're answering to all your relations when you're doing research. And so I think that, doing this work, I really need to reflect on and learn about, what my relations are. And that is challenging and it's enriching and it's going to be a transformative process. And so, yeah, that's kind of both my biggest challenge and also like the exciting part about this for me.
Yeah, it's a challenge, but it's also a gift.
Exactly. Yeah.
And Sean Wilson is a remarkable and really accomplished and well-respected Indigenous scholar, particularly in the area of research. And this notion of research as service to community rather than a research as sort of leading, researchers as leading. Well, that sounds like a wonderful opportunity for you, but also for community to be in that leadership position and have those the good research partnerships as wise practices, right, for other people to learn from. So yeah, congratulations, and yeah, I'm just really happy for you that you have that kind of experience. Yeah, it's really good. So where are you in the process right now? Are you collecting information from folks, or where are you?
Right now, I'm currently I'm organizing the interviews. I've reached out to some folks to see if they're interested in participating and if, you know, the research aligns with their needs as well, because I really want to make sure that this research is useful for everyone involved, and to offer the opportunity to different participants and rights holders to even, you know, add some questions to the roster that I'm going to be asking if they want to learn different things about it, you know. So I've been doing some initial reaching out and organizing interviews, and interviews will probably be taking place, you know, early January, February. It's going to be a busy time, especially if we're talking about contribution agreements end of fiscal year. But
For sure.
so hopefully we'll get it going. But
Yeah.
also, I'm not going to rush anyone.
No.
So.
No. Yeah. So you'll be completing your degree in a year or more. Yeah. And so if someone could grant you a wish for the future after you graduate, what would your wish for your future be in terms of what you do?
In terms of what I do, I mean, I already feel so lucky right now because they're bridging me in, so I get to continue working with the Indigenous Guardians pilot. So career-wise, I feel like I've already had my wish granted. Just in general, related to the research though, honestly, if after I graduate, somebody could look at this research and then really start to get the innovative conversations going around more reciprocal Indigenous Crown fiscal relations, like that would be amazing.
So you're doing interviews. So the fun question that I'd like to ask you is, if you could interview anyone living today, anyone, who would it be and why?
Anyone living today, who would it be and why? That's a tough question.
It could be for fun.
Yeah,
it could be for fun.
Yeah, just somebody that you find fascinating.
Yeah.
Someone that I find fascinating.
Your brain.
Well, I'm having a blank.
When Charlotte asked me that question in a social setting, I said I would like to interview her. So
someone told me.
Oh, turning it around.
Someone else said their mother.
Their mother. Oh my goodness.
Their mother. Yeah. Oh, people have given us tons of different kind of answers. I can ask you another question if you want.
Yeah, maybe. Okay. I'm sorry. The names of people are not coming.
I know. Well, and sometimes there's so many people that you can't choose one. Okay, I'll give you one that's a little bit unless you don't eat. But so let's go with this one. What's your favorite sandwich and why?
My favorite sandwich. I have a kind of love-hate relationship with sandwiches.
Yeah.
Sometimes I really like them, but sometimes I can't stand them. But when I like them, one that I don't think I've really gotten tired of is probably a pear and brie and honey and arugula sandwich.
oh goodness.
That's
Now
a,
I'm getting hungry.
that's a really
Yeah.
good sandwich.
Yeah, that's one that's like,
That's a
if
great.
I want a fancy sandwich, that's my
Yeah.
go-to.
What kind of bread?
Depends, but probably like a French bread, or sometimes a sourdough can add an interesting note to it.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Or a nice brioche bun, maybe.
Yeah, that could be really good.
Okay. All right. It's too close to lunch now, isn't it? This was amazing, Ryleigh. Thank you so much. This was really enlightening and uplifting. I'm just so
Aw.
happy for you, happy for communities that you're interested in contributing. I mean, we need our allies as to help in the work that folks are doing. So I just want to really thank you so much for this. It's really been fun too.
Aw, thank you for the opportunity to come talk with you all.
Hey folks, Charlotte back one more time, this time with the Research Support Center staff. We've got Kathy here, we've got Emma, we've got Jasmine, and we're going to talk to you, or they're going to talk to you about some really fascinating things that are going on in the Research Support Center, because we're fascinated. Yeah. And so, yeah, I'm going to turn it over to you, Jasmine, if you want to talk to us about grant applications and the like.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. So yeah, here we are nearing the end of another year. On the pre-grant side, it has been a busy one. So yeah, I'll just provide a little year-end summary, I guess. So first, I'm happy to say that our upward trend in the number of grant applications being submitted every year continues. So last year, we submitted an all-time high of 141 applications, and we surpassed that mark at the end of November. So we're on track to submit a handful more this year compared to last year. So funding applications were submitted to a variety of Canadian sources, including all three of the Canadian tri-agencies, so SSHRC, CIHR, and CERC. Proposals were also submitted to federal, provincial, and municipal government funders. So for example, Crown Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs Canada, the BC Ministry of Forests, Lands, Natural Resource Operations and Rural Development, as well as the City of Vancouver. And applications were also submitted to health authorities, as well as to the Vancouver Foundation, Michael Smith Health Research BC, MyTax, and more. And applications were also submitted internationally. So this includes to the Danone International Institute, UK Research and Innovation, and the National Institutes of Health Research in the US. So just a really good cross-section of sources. And our success rate for 2021 so far is 64%. We're still waiting to hear the results for about 39 applications that are under review, but the value of the successful applications submitted so far this year is over $4 million. So we're really excited about that. And finally, I guess our office hasn't only been processing faculty members' applications, so we do continue to support trainees as they navigate the institutional approval process. So this applies to their applications for operating funds, as well as applications for fellowships and scholarships that require sign-off by the UVic Office of Research Services. So the volume of trainee applications held steady this year compared to last year. So it's great to see the strong contingent of trainees continuing to apply for funds. And in terms of their successes, they secured fellowships such as the BC Support Unit Patient Oriented Research Fellowship, Michael Smith Health Research BC Trainee Fellowship, and they have obtained operating funds through competitions such as the SSHRC Connection Grant funding opportunity. So yeah, HSD researchers, both faculty and trainees, were really busy this year. 2021, yeah, it's one for the record books for sure.
Wow, we rock. All
Yeah,
in
rock
the
on.
middle of a pandemic. That is wonderful news. 64% success rate.
Yes, yeah, so far. So that's, yeah, we're really jazzed about those numbers.
Yeah, That is incredible. Thank you. Thanks so much. Yeah, so I'm going to turn it over to Emma now to talk about some of the research enhancement initiatives that we're undertaking. So yeah, good to see you, Emma.
Hey, Charlotte, thanks so much. Yeah, folks, as you can tell, we've had a busy year. Jasmine, it sounds like, we're going to be around 150 applications for 2021, which is absolutely crazy. I wish I could give you a raise. That's all. You've been busy. I've been busy too. Our new dean, Helga, has been supporting a lot of really great initiatives, which is super exciting. So a few of the things that we've done in the last few months that have kind of kept us going and highlighted a lot of the great stuff going on in HSD include the launch of our inaugural HSD Community Speakers Series. So we had our first in-person event in almost 2 years, which was really great and exciting and strange. It was held at the Legacy Art Gallery in downtown Victoria, and it featured Heather Castledon from the School of Public Administration, and Jeff Corntassel from Circle joined her, and they gave a really great talk about the work that they've been doing. And yeah, we had a nice crowd for that, lots of kind of questions from the audience and a really great discussion afterwards, which was just really energizing to see happening again, rather than more of this Zoom stuff. So folks were really excited about that. We also awarded just under $20,000 in graduate research awards. So that's the first time that we've done that. There were 5 master's awards and 3 PhD awards. So just a small pocket of money, but something to help our students kind of do some of their data collection or analysis, or if they need to have a meeting, we were able to support a little bit of that work with a monetary contribution, which was great. And the review of that also included some kind of cascading mentorship. So we had some doctoral students, some postdocs, and some brand new faculty members who joined together to review those applications that came in and make the decision. So that was something that was really cool as well. We also, in the spring or summer, I guess, provided a second round of HSD internal research grants. So those ones focused on collaboration. So the ones that were funded saw researchers from at least 2 schools kind of joining together to do some work, which was also a really neat initiative that we were quite pleased with. So those were kind of some of the things that have kept us busy. And then we also have more things coming up. So we're now planning our second community speaker series that will be in February. So watch for a poster for that. It's going to be at the First People's House and featuring Gina Starblanket, who's a new faculty member in Indigenous governance, which is really exciting. I think that'll be a great thing to kind of go along with the launch of the newly imagined program. So we're excited for that. And we're also planning our first HSD Research Day, which is something folks have been telling us they want. So we're going to deliver. And we are doing that in the spring, I believe, the late spring. So watch for info on that as well. And yeah, that's what's kept me busy in 2021 and will continue to keep me busy into 2022, I'm sure.
Thanks so much. Yeah, thanks, Emma. That's there's some really exciting stuff going on, and I think people are excited about it as well. And folks, we're now have a brand new sort of or newly renovated the research support center itself, and we have a newly renovated research support space right next door. There's a door connecting the 2 spaces now, and so it's really exciting to see some physical changes that we were able to really get those things done during the pandemic when people weren't around. So that was helpful as well. Was there anything else anybody wanted to update our faculty and students about that's been hot off the press?
Gosh, Charlotte, you think we should have more things to update people about? We just gave you a list.
I think I think we're just going to keep going as we go. So thanks everyone. Really good to see you all, and to get an update on what's been going on. Seems like people have been doing some really amazing and a lot of great work. So yeah, thanks.